Hello and welcome to our latest edition of the Braeburn Whisky podcast, and I'm joined today by my new co-host, Art.
Thank you for having me, Jacob.
You're my third co-host,
yes,
I think. So,
número tres.
Numero tres, right? The lucky number three. There we go. Finally, three's the charm.
Well, three's a sticker.
Hopefully, you'll be able to stick it out with me.
Yes. High hopes.
So welcome anyway. It's nice to have you on board, and we're going to talk about premiumisation in whisky. As Billy pointed out, premiumisation doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting a superior product.
No.
It could just mean that it's a fancy packet. It's the
it's
same
been
thing.
dressed up a wee bit.
Exactly
right.
Dressed up, and put a fancy skirt on it.
Yep.
And we're wondering how much of that applies to whisky. And I think, yes, we're seeing this premiumisation. So let's pull it all the way back.
Yes, let's do that.
We sell casks of whisky. These casks of whisky mature. They are invariably bottled as older age statements, and we, as a company, position ourselves very much on that premium end of the market. So it's pretty important to us that we understand whether or not premium products and premium whisky is selling, and it's selling.
Right. It is.
We can see that in the bottle prices. I think there was, I've probably mentioned this figure several times, but the evolution of older age statements, I think I read somewhere that over the past 18 months, on average, these older age statements have increased in price by 180%. Begs the question, can that continue?
Can that, yeah. That's a good question.
And it's not a recent phenomenon in whisky. It's been going on for decades. We keep talking about COVID, and how that's impacted our industry, impacted most industries. And certainly what we, and forgive me here if I feel free to cut in, I'm a chatterbox. But if we look at the impact that COVID had on the whisky industry, and more specifically premiumisation, it's clearly had a positive impact in that regard, because one trend that seems to continue into 2023 is that people are prepared to spend more on a higher quality product or higher quality alcohol and drink less. And in 2022, there's obviously, this was a year that every industry was recovering from COVID and the pandemic.
Yep.
The whisky industry was no different in that regard, and we saw some amazing numbers.
Yeah, we did.
Associated.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Record-breaking year, exactly. So the big question is, what's driving that? Is it going to continue? And how? And what does that mean to us, our clients, and our investors? And I think the truth of the matter is that it's not all good news.
No, there's a lot of headwinds, a lot of macro challenges at the minute. General slowdowns, people having a higher cost of living, being a bit more selective with their purchases. So there is, again, a bit of a slowdown in volume. That's what we're seeing in the data, but the relative slowdown in monetary value is almost the same. So that's, again, tying into the more premium brands being sold, premium bottlings, and people being more selective and buying better quality stuff that they enjoy. That's what they're putting their money into. So
I've got some figures here just to support that out. You say.
I know you're a data man. Go ahead.
I'm not a data, but I have some data. So if we look at the first half, all the data that we've got that we can refer to over the course of this conversation is up until the first half, the end of the first half of 2023, and it shows that the value of Scotch whisky exports held steady when compared to the first half of 2022, as we said, a year in which a lot of records were broken as markets grew and recovered and people were restocking. The export value in the first half of 2023 was £2.75 billion. Only. But it was down. But by 3.6% on 2022. Now, people might look at that and think, oh, that's a cause for concern. But as we know, 2022 is a very, very special year. And if everything continued to sort of growth that we saw in 2022, that would be absolutely bonkers. So there's no surprises that we've seen a bit of a flattening out of it. But the volume of exports fell by 20%, which is the equivalent of about 630 million bottles. But this points towards this global trend of consumers premiumising when it comes to spirits, trading up.
Like I just mentioned, the volume's down, but the monetary value hasn't really shifted too much. So again, ties in with the whole theme: buying better, obviously buying a little bit less in quantity.
And so you mentioned headwinds earlier on in the conversation. Obviously that is, what are these headwinds? How long is it going to last for? Our economy is going to recover. An observation that we made was that obviously people had far more money in the coffers.
They did,
post-COVID. So why not go out and buy yourself a special bottle of whiskey?
Yeah, treat yourself.
Treat yourself, exactly right. But I think that those coffers are running a bit thin now.
Maybe on fumes, a few people.
So people are sort of not prepared at this moment in time, whilst we've got these headwinds. It's sort of, I won't go as far as say global financial woes, but the Chinese economy's been in a pretty bad state. That's a really important market for us. Europe's been hit with inflation rates at the highest in a generation.
Crazy.
So everybody's got less money to spend. There is obviously a group of people that are immune from economic woes, such as inflation. It doesn't necessarily impact their spending power.
No.
And these people continue to spend money. And I think, Art, you've got some interesting bottles to tell us about, haven't you? That have been released over the course of 2023.
This year has been insane for expressions over rare whiskey territories, like plus 12 years old. The higher you go, there's just really not very many bottles out there. But this year alone, there's been a number of bottlings that are over 50 years plus. Macallan came out with a 72-year-old this year.
What sort of money was that?
Glen, we're looking about £500,000 for that probably. There's a 70-year-old Glen Grant going for over £100,000. Balvenie, 70-year-old.
So this
it's not even at 40% strength. It's sitting around 43, I think, or 46. So
it's been an amazing.
The angel share must have been incredible.
It's funny. I've got another one here that I was looking at, which was 46 years old, clocks in at 50.9%. 46-year-old whiskey.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's pretty bonkers, isn't it?
And just even brands that you're not considering as premium are releasing these. Had Bladnoch have their Samla special release, one of 15, one of 50, one of 100.
Do we know what sort of money they were sort of commanding?
£10,000.
I've got a couple here that I actually bothered to find the prices out of.
Good man. See, that's why you're the data guy. I'm just here to spice things up.
So I actually, the ones that I picked that I spotted was the collections, the bottle collections.
Yes.
And there's three specifically.
Always good ones to own.
So there was Dalmore's, and I think this is the first time they've done it. Cask Curation series, and I think in there was
sounds juicy.
This is 28. I've got it written down here. 26, 28 and a 48-year-old. And for those three bottles, that's $37,000 US. I should qualify that. This is all from 2023, and these bottles sell out. Diageo's much coveted Prime and Ultima collection, which is wonderful stuff. And I quite often talk about invisible distilleries that people aren't familiar with, maybe because they're closed.
Yeah,
that would be
you
a good
reason.
Come across heard of it.
We don't come across the names. Yeah.
Or the demand for their spirit is so high amongst blenders that we just don't get the opportunity very often to see it bottled as a single malt. And I know that they've had in the past in the Primer and Ultima collection, they've had Linkwood, which is a favourite of mine. I know Linkwood is always hard work getting your hands on because it's such a wonderful blending whiskey. But in amongst Diageo's Prima and Ultima collection, we had a Brora 1997, a Port Ellen 1978, a 30-year-old
Petit Vec.
Petit Vec, there you go. That was finished in Pedro Jimenez. Then there was a Lagavulin in 1997, 25 years old, 50.7%. Oban, 26-year-old, a Singleton, 37-year-old. Oh, there was a Talisker 76 in there as well. $44,000.
Only for those.
Lovely.
Yeah, there's loads.
Just fantastic bottles.
A Glen Turret. I mean, that's not a distillery you'd think would be releasing.
It's not the highest profile of
exactly, one of the oldest, but they released a 50-year-old expression going for $80,000.
Wonderful. Oh, and just for the record, we're not drinking an £80,000 bottle of whiskey. We are drinking a 12-year-old Mortlach, the Beast. As you may or may not know, one of my favourite distilleries, the Wee Witchy. So,
cheers, Sancho. That's a good one.
Cheers, Bill.
Cheers, Bill.
And yeah, the other one that I spotted was the Macallan Colour Collection, which celebrates the colour of their bottles, or the colour of their spirit.
How original, Macallan.
Yeah. That's
why they're branding the Kings, that's what they are.
And as you would imagine, the colour obviously relates to their use of sherry casks. Mm-hmm. And I think in there, I know for a fact, I've got it written down here. So I think they've actually priced the bottles individually. So you've got a 12-year-old, £80, 15-year-old, £165, the 18-year-old, £350. Then you have a 21-year-old in there, it's $1,100, and a 30-year-old, which is $4,455. And I think the sort of the whole marketing thing is the change in the colour, reflecting how long the whiskey's spent in the cask. Interestingly, we talk about again premiumisation.
Yeah,
we see this in a lot of distilleries that are sort of, and I had a great example. I don't want to sort of have a pop at Macallan too much, but they are the best at it.
That's why they're the top.
Yeah, there was. I was at the airport. I was talking to the whiskey export there, the travel section, and we were talking about this particular bottle. I can't remember the name of it, but I think it was about £4,500. No age statement.
Wow.
Interestingly. Magnificent colour,
design as
to
well,
the whiskey,
well.
And the bottle was, it was an amazing bottle of whiskey. The name escapes me, but sort of across there on the shelf we had the Mortlach, which was going for a mere £50, I think, for a 12-year-old, and it's for as long as that lasts, then just fill your cupboards with it. Mortlach, and I think it was a 14-year-old actually, around £50. I've emptied my pantry. It's just full of bottles of Mortlach now. But this is the Beast of Dufftown with the Wee Witchy.
Quality.
The point I was trying to make was this. Billy said to us before we sat down and did this show, we talked about, Billy mentioned Lurpak as an example. So you can buy Lurpak in, your standard, what is it,
plastic
foil or something.
Yeah, it's plastic, I think.
Yeah. Or you could spend, I don't know what the price was, let's say for argument's sake, an extra £5, and you could get the same Lurpak, but in a tin.
What?
So that's your premiumisation. With whiskey, thankfully, there is a bit more to it. And even whilst we are still seeing, and this again, this is what we're always rapping about here, this the scarcity of older expressions, and this is why Macallan obviously is a phenomenal brand, and they're all about premium.
Yeah, they are.
What was it you telling me that they do down the distillery? You were telling me something.
Oh, crikey. Macallan's obviously gone through a new site in the last couple of years, but their whole
about 140 million they spent on that new distillery site.
Amount, but it's about creating not a whiskey tour, it's a whiskey experience.
Yeah, sort of lifestyle stuff.
Exactly right, lifestyle stuff. Because they've got hand woven clothes, scarves, hats,
What?
Hoodies, the whole thing, the whole shebang. It's like merchandising, right?
Are these, just out of interest, these sheep that are on the
I wouldn't put it past them, yeah. I wouldn't put it past them because they've got acres of land. Like we're talking about
from sheep. You got what we got from cast to glass, from grass,
from
grass to back,
grass to neck, scars. But yeah, there's a whole ethos is a whiskey experience now. It's not just doing a quick tour, seeing how it's all distilled and learning a bit more about the ingredients. It's a full immersive experience. We're talking about because again, premiumisation, they've got a beginners, a medium, a more premium package as well, and based on what you're looking at.
Tell us about the money art.
All right, we've got some figures. I've only come across two because I think you have to actually sign up and get quotes. I didn't go that far.
Inquiry.
Yeah, price on inquiry. They have two basic packages, which is actually quite reasonable because I have a couple of other distilleries to compare to.
Yeah.
And it's actually quite reasonable. So Macallan's actually £50 for their basic experience. That will take around 2 hours to do the tour.
It's actually a really good deal, by the way.
Yeah, two hours, a bit of tasting, obviously speaking with probably the distillery manager and a few other people. And they've got a more immersive experience, which is $250, and that's around 5 hours.
I'm assuming you get to drink some whiskey then over the course of 5 hours.
Yeah. But in comparison, I come across the Highland Park. So again, Eddington, more again premium brand, premium ethos. I think it's the most northern distillery in all of Scotland. I mean, on the island of Orkney. Yeah. So they've got 3 tiers as well, but I'm not sure what they include exactly. But starting, they've got £30. The Spirit of Orkney experience, again around 2 hours. Didn't go into great detail, but a bit of whiskey tasting as well. Probably their core range, maybe from non-age statement to maybe 12-year-old. They've got a vintage experience for around £650. So again, in comparison to the Macallan, you're talking about 400. A big jump up.
No, it's a lot just for a tour.
But yes, it continues further up. We've got a rare and exclusive experience. So maybe we're talking like 30-old, like some of the rare casks, the vintages they've got. You're getting a wee dram.
So for Neil Brown, we should definitely do this.
Yes.
I think it would be remiss of us
Jacob
not
will
to
do the beginner course. I'll go on the rare and exclusive. £1,300.
It's not bad, is it, for a sort of afternoon with the guys at Highland Park?
Exactly. But back to the Macallan, because again, their ethos is more of a whiskey experience. You can do other things that are not specifically tied to whiskey. It's about, the land outside the distillery, because we're talking about rolling hills, green fields, the river space. We're talking fly fishing experiences, hunting, Bentley tours of all things, and other luxury experiences.
Let's rewind a little bit here.
This is premiumisation, exactly
Bentley
right.
Tours, and I heard it, Bentley Tours. So.
You take a Bentley and I guess you go around.
So I can guarantee he's got no idea what this Bentley tour is.
Jacob, you're exactly right.
So we don't know. Let's imagine then what a Bentley tour is. Do you get to? Do they take you around the distillery through the still house in a Bentley, or?
Well, I'm hoping it's not donuts in the car park outside the estate, and you just go woo. Yeah. No, I imagine
it's like to drive past a distillery at high speed and go, there it is!
I don't know. Maybe this Bentley, let's imagine for imagination sake, this Bentley's a 4x4 and we're going off-roading.
Right.
We're going through the hills.
So you didn't say that?
No,
I'm just 4x4.
I'm just using my imagination.
Do they have an SUV now, don't they?
I don't know, maybe
yes,
they do.
They do, yeah.
Again, premiumisation.
Premiumise the SUV segment, absolutely.
Yeah, but that's actually quite mild because there's other whiskey experiences. So this is becoming more, again, into whiskey tourism, another aspect of premiumisation. Chivas Regal, the Pernod Ricard, that brand, they've got an actual destination now. They've got the Lynn House that they're advertising for whiskey experiences. And again,
that looks amazing.
We're talking about rare whiskies as part of the experience. You rent the house, again, similar to Macallan, we're talking about activities, again, to do with the Scottish countryside, hunting, fishing, etc.
Tourism.
Yeah, because that's a huge...
You were talking about it, and it makes a massive contribution towards premiumisation. If somebody's prepared to spend, close to £2,000 on a tour, they obviously feel passionately about the whiskey. They feel, and I think it makes a massive contribution towards the premiumisation of spirits, because how do you justify this premiumisation? You've got to bring people closer to your product so they understand it. And when we talk about whiskey and the nuances of production and terroir and casks and the different types of stills and so many different elements that can determine the character of the whiskey that we're drinking, good or bad, people getting closer to that. I always hear this. You go on distillery tours and you see people coming off the tour that have never done it before, and they're invariably blown away by the level of craftsmanship and the attention to detail involved in the production of whiskey. And then if you go to a few distilleries when you're in Scotland, you'll see that very few distilleries are alike. Yeah. Which again contributes towards this,
I would say
varied characters of whiskies. So
no one distillery tour is exactly the same. They all differ. I think you've made this comment a few times. There's only one way to make whiskey, but everyone else does it different. So you get to know a bit more about their craftsmanship, why they're slightly different. I mean, you can taste it in the liquid. Like, there's slight variations in the flavour and colours and etc. But
this is not by chance.
Not by chance, exactly.
Not by chance.
A lot to do with the water, a lot to do with the barley, the grain, and the process. But like, over 2 million people last year visited, and that's a record. Again, that's going to be something that, again, is because it's only a new thing, isn't it? It's over the last 10 to 15 years, distilleries are actually...
Dalmore are just about to build a new visitor centre.
Probably
they're looking to copy Macallan's, if I understood correctly.
Yeah, that's going to be an area for growth for loads of distilleries.
Yeah.
And again,
I even read something they were talking about distillery tourism actually being detrimental to these local communities and the environment generally.
Well, I'd say they're hard to get to because a lot of these distilleries are on country roads.
It was about traffic on
and
roads
that are not designed. Yeah, because I've spoken to a few clients that have actually mentioned that I went to different distillery tours. Roads are treacherous because of talking about farm roads, and you've got people coming and going. You maybe have to pull in, and again, a lot of these roads will have like heather, long grass on the sides, an embankment, hedgerows. You can't see around the corners and.
But I don't think we can underestimate the contribution that these distilleries
jobs,
tours make.
Merchandise, more money in the distillery's pocket. I mean, it's going to make them more profitable they can hold.
Absolutely.
But also
the premiumisation.
But loyalty, brand loyalty, things like that. And
if you understand something, you spent your time, you spent a day, and you travelled up there, and you went to hotels, etc., and you end up in one of these wonderful, mysterious distilleries with a master distiller showing you his secrets. And you leave that, it'll stick with you for an awful long time. And when you go into that spirits retailer, you go into the local shop, and you think, I saw them making that.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that you'll be prepared to spend a little bit more because you understand the nature of that premium product. You're a little bit closer to it. So I absolutely 100%. I think that does make
it gives a bit more heart and soul as well. I think
people want to be connected
to it. Yeah, good word.
So this is as part of the experience and part of the whiskey experience. And I'm sure we're preaching to the choir here to some extent. We know about
your purse and buy a premium bottle at the end of all this.
But why? And it's that. It's about heritage. It's about culture. It's about history. And this is why it's a little bit different than putting your Lurpak in a tin. One of the key things that sort of, and I just sort of
maybe there's a Lurpak experience. I don't know.
There is a Lurpak experience.
White bread, brown bread, bagels.
We won't talk about that on here. And the thing with the whiskey, so I was talking about the guy at the airport and this non-age statement, £4,500 a bottle of whiskey. Clearly what Macallan have done there, and I'm not trying to suggest for a second that it's an inferior whiskey, but there's no age statement on there, so the wood is obviously really important at Macallan, and you would assume, and I didn't get into too much detail, we saw there was some Oloroso, some Pedro Jimenez in the mix, but what was pretty clear is this casks management for this particular spirit is pretty special. But so there you go. That's like genuine premiumisation. That's not just putting a skirt on it and calling it something new. But age statements. This is when we talk about premium spirits. How do you identify a premium spirit? Well, you can identify it to a certain extent by the amount of time that it's been sat in that warehouse. Lifetimes.
Yeah, you can't cheat time.
Yeah. And, if you've got a 30-year-old expression, that's essentially, a lifetime.
Yeah, that is.
And you will pay for that. And we, again, without repeating what we already know, that demand is so high, even though 2023 is we're not going to see the same sort of performance as 2022. I think everybody understands that. It would be crazy if we could see that sort of growth in any sort of industry. But what we've seen is that it's still there. It's not a flash in the pan. It's been going on for a long time now. Before COVID, it's premiumisation. And unfortunately, Scotch, over and above all the other spirits, does have that. It's quite a coveted, these older expressions are quite coveted. So what does that mean to us here at Braeburn Whisky? Why is it important that this premiumisation of the spirit continues? Well, the main reason is because we won't be bottling any of our whiskies, or we don't bottle any of our whiskies young.
No.
This is how investors see value in the cask that they invest in. Obviously, we need to look after that cask, care for it, and get it to a point where it is an old and rare whisky, and ultimately a premium whisky. So it's pretty important we understand that market. And we've looked at some bottlings that suggest, obviously, that people are still prepared to pay. I think I've got a little note here that says terroir.
Terroir.
Yeah.
Lovely word.
It is
that
a
French?
lovely word, isn't it? I think it might be French for dirt or something like that. Is it French for dirt?
Chuck some dirt on it.
But
Got a scratch, chuck some dirt on it.
But yes, is that what they do in Scotland? Just put dirt on it. I can believe that.
Iron brew.
But yes, terroirs. This is one of these things we said it is really, really important, or becoming increasingly more important to the production of whiskey, and again adding to that further premiumisation.
Quality also.
And then quality. Yeah, there you go. That's the key.
Yeah.
That's the key
buying
thing.
Quality. And a good tasting spirit.
So what do we think? Do we think that we're in good shape? Do we think that you should... I mean, are people still going to be buying 40, 50,000 bottles of whiskey, pound bottles of whiskey? And what's our conclusion?
I think yes. Because of collectibles? Because because if you think that the market for collectibles, rare things, I mean, you can't, again, said it earlier, can't cheat time. I mean, how many bottles are there of a 40-year-old whiskey in the world? Maybe a couple of thousand tops. I mean, we have to take another 40 years to mature one, or you're going to have to, again, with demand so high, you're going to have to let these casks catch up or hold them back, and again, bottle maybe the non-age statement stuff and package it correctly, and maybe like Macallan is doing, but they're maybe holding back certain reserves because these rare expressions will be rarer and rarer, because you have to get these casks out.
Let's have a look at the market. And let's have. I mean, if we just look at, let's just look quite simply
These cheers.
at how much whiskey is being consumed in our most important markets, and as it happens,
Fact and figures.
Got the data. So the USA, and I'm assuming this is export value of Scotch whisky in the first half of 2023 was down 2.57 billion. So this is was down to 2.57 billion, not down by 2.57 billion. So it's down by 95.8 million compared with the first half of last year. Which is a lot of whiskey, by the way.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It is a reason to be sort of taking notice. And
it'll still be close to a record-breaking year after that.
So Diageo had a warning, didn't they? Earnings warning. I think they had a revision.
With that. Yeah.
And what I read was that the reason was the South American market didn't perform as well as they thought it might.
Yeah, they're seeing a slowdown there.
And I think from an industry's perspective, one of the great things now about whiskey and this global nature of this brand is that you're not overly exposed to just one market.
Exactly.
And they were saying specifically that we're reporting revised figures because of the South American market, and there's a lot of bulk, a lot of blended whiskies go into that market.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily a reflection of...
On the single malts.
Exactly. And obviously, being CEO, it's a job to just...
clarify all that.
Clarify that and just reassure investors that it's not time to jump ship. And I'll sort of read what she said here. So what happened was the company's share price slumped by 16% recently, following this profit warning, and it was said that it was caused by trouble in the Latin American market. But she insisted that consumer downtrading and reluctance to spend in the region was an isolated issue, and that the sentiment relative to our industry is improving. And naturally, she invokes premiumisation and explained that premium and above spirits, the market share had gone from 25% to 35% over the past decade, while super premium spirits, and I suppose those the spirits that we've been talking about, have grown at double the rate of the other price brands. So a little bit of correction, a little bit of pullback, difficult economic sort of environment at the moment. Chinese economy, we talked about that. High inflationary environment that we're all having to live
no one
within.
can escape it.
People are prioritising a little bit, but we still see the trend. And furthermore, we still got these other markets. You look at India, keep talking about India all the time. We just wonder when it's going to happen. But we all know about their increasing, or the growing middle class, and sort of it's becoming an increasingly more affluent society.
Yeah, it is.
And they love whiskey.
Emerging market is huge potential.
Yeah, and I think the general feeling as well that premium whiskies will be welcomed in that particular part of the world. You know, Indians know a lot about whiskey.
They do. What is the tariffs at the minute? 150% for single malts?
150%, yeah, 150%. And the government has, according to what I know, the minimum is 25%. So I think it'll be...
That's what they've dropped to?
No, I think it's going to be an incremental introduction. So it'll go from 150, I think, to 80. But over the course of 5 years...
drop.
It will find its ways down to the actual minimum, the minimum duty that's applied.
Yeah, that's interesting. That'll be a big stimulant or catalyst for next year if that comes to fruition.
That's going to have a massive contribution. And we just have to hope the global economy improves to some extent, which, I'm no economist, so I couldn't possibly comment on that. But China as a market is experiencing, albeit a slow recovery. And then the data that we're looking at, it's slowed. Everybody expected it, but what is apparent is that premiumisation continues. And we talk about millennials becoming increasingly more affluent. As their sort of life path continues, and they're earning more. And they continue to spend money on premium spirits. And now we're seeing a lot of brands as well. It sounds a bit awful, because we are selling alcohol in the end, aren't we? Targeting youngsters with their expensive alcohol.
Blame the algorithm.
But, the demographic is changing, and I think the way that whiskey is consuming is changing as well. It's not necessarily sort of stuffy old blokes sat around in,
new
smoking jackets.
All sorts of stuff.
Yeah, it was always sort of associated with sort of quiet and gentle drinking. But I think, there's a new generation of drinkers. They've got money. They appreciate quality, and our whiskey producers are making efforts to appeal to that demographic quite successfully.
I think that the SWA also quantified the actual revenue they brought in over that course of the year. So
on the distillery tour, specifically distillery tourism.
Plus £85 million in their pockets. So that's incredible.
At, is it? Yeah.
And that's probably an area of growth. And what I found interesting was that the average person will spend over 5 hours in the distillery.
Asleep somewhere in the corner.
Maybe. but the longer you're there, the more money you'll spend. That's just a fact.
absolutely.
So they're very clever that way.
Okay, I certainly don't have anything more to add, which is unusual for me, Art.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, how do you feel? Do you feel like you've shared with us everything you...
I think so. I think for a first timer, I think that was a good effort. I obviously improved from here.
I think it's a good effort.
A sterling effort.
Sterling effort.
I like
Sterling.
That. I like that.
I like it, sterling.
Get
your reference in.
there, yeah.
All right.
It was good.
Well, well, thanks again for giving us your time and listening to us. I hope it was in some way informative, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, exactly right.